see your commander-in-chief right here in the flesh, in person. Yeah.
It's kind of surreal.
Yeah.
Yes, the whole thing is kind of surreal. Life is surreal these days.
It is. Yeah.
Hey. And I've been praying so much about not one more child being injected.
That's right.
Not one more. That this is it's a blessing. You're a blessing.
Thank you. Yes. This whole team is a blessing.
The whole team.
And, not just for Canada, but for the whole world. We are Canada first, and everyone's watching. And the heavy lifting has been done. Many of our brothers and sisters in Canada didn't realize that prior to my coming out to the public as the Commander-in-Chief and Queen, that Canada was being run from Beijing.
Yes. And we saw evidence of that with troops on the ground and
their military troops training.
Sold.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And then I said to the U.S. Commander-in-Chief and our allied forces, I said, yeah, guess what? The enemy is not overseas, is in Canada, and is getting ready to launch an attack against the U.S. And so we need to bring our special troops back to Canada and back to the United States and get these guys out of here quickly, as fast as possible. And
it was close.
That was close. We've removed tens of thousands from each province, and we fried a few 10,000s of them. But yes, Canada was sold to China by the Conservatives and the Liberals and all the parties, with the blessing of the fake Queen. And they didn't care that the Canadian people were about to be hauled into camps. For them, that was just money, and they were, that was their idea. So I said to my friends and families and royal families around the world that were part of and are part of the White Hats, I said, and I cried for months. I said, I cannot let my people and Canada be treated this way and be sold and be under communist regime. So I'm all in. Well, I've been part of it for a long time, but it took the visual of having Chinese Communist Party military on the ground in Canada to really solidify my commitment to say I cannot allow this to happen to my people and to my country. And the rest is history. After frying a few, well, more than a few, tens of thousands of them, and they're now out of the country. And this is just the, shall I say, this is just the waking the people part. The heavy lifting has been done in the background, behind the scenes. So we are safe, Canada's safe, Canadians are safe, and Canadians don't have to learn Chinese. So, yes.
Yes, there was footage of the Chinese soldiers in BC.
In
hey,
BC, that was in BC.
Yeah.
Even
that was
now
scary.
I'm emotional, thinking back of how serious and how we were sold, how Canada was sold, and Canadians were sold to China. And
it certainly makes sense that anyone wanting to attack the United States would come through Canada, given our border and
exactly. Yes. Yeah. There's an open, and plus they had an open invitation, obviously, from all the different zebras. I call them stripes. 5 different stripes, 5 different political parties, and all of their minions, and they were happy to just take money from whoever was the highest bidder, and didn't didn't give a hoot about the children in Canada itself and the Canadians. So, but that part is over, and we're not going to allow anyone ever again to control Canada and we the people. So, and of course the world is safe, and a lot safer now that the United States is safe, without, of course, now that there are no Chinese Communist military in Canada. That puts our brothers and sisters in the US at ease, of course, and safe, as well as the rest of the world, because the United States was the last to fall, and had it fallen, then the entire world would have belonged to the Communist New World Order. That was their plan. So there is the information, and yeah. Do you have any questions, by the way, before I continue talking about what had happened before? So
I have a lot. I guess one, it seems I guess the American followers are a little bit taken aback by the whole Trump thing, and it's hard for many people to get their head around. One thing is the truth that's happening now. The other thing is sort of what's happening behind the scenes,
right,
and
yes,
who's real and who's not, and how it's going to play out. And people are weary, I guess, of waiting. You know, they waited for January 6th for him to come back. They wait for this, they wait for that, and the whole idea of truth and is that we have been duped big time. We don't want to be duped again. People are rightfully concerned about whether they are being taken again.
right, yes,
Right? So they're looking for evidence. They're looking for things, and I guess if I understand right, there perhaps is some universal law from above in terms of people having to wake themselves up.
That's correct,
you know,
yes,
I think
yes,
it boggles people's minds that they're not used to a leader who is down to earth and not with all the pomp and ceremony.
exactly, yes.
And so this is something that you have to do on the QT a little bit, so that people come to you and people seek it out. Is that correct? In the sense that, you know, many people will say, well, why don't you, you know, come in and get on mainstream media, or go in St. John's to Confederation Building and, you know, tell everybody who you are and the way it's going to be. You know, people don't understand why you...
I think people do not understand because they have a fixed idea of what a leader should be. They were, I believe, when I did mention during when I declared martial law February 5th, that I said, unless there's violence, you will not see military on the ground, right? I'm not a dictator. I am a leader that is wanting her people to realize that their freedom has been returned to them, and they have to wake up and claim it. The heavy lifting has been done, but I will not go there and bulldoze my way through. Because when they wake up and they recognize that their freedom has been returned, that on the other side, the flip side of that is they're recognizing my presence and my authority, gentle power and gentle truth. So that is why I'm not calling up the military and say, go ransack, you know, an entire town just to prove my authority.
Yes.
I said when I was in Ottawa, I am backed by the United States Armed Forces and global forces. It doesn't matter what they do, it is done. So that is why there is no need for me to use force.
Yes.
So this is one thing that the Canadian people need to recognize, is that I will not use force. I'm not a dictator. I am guided by the highest divine beings, and I'm here to deliver peace and prosperity. That's who I am. That's what my spiritual contract is. So you will not see force from me. You'll have to take your freedom back. That's already there. The gate has been unlocked. They have to walk through that gate. And that part only they can do.
Because likely there would be a fair amount of backlash as well if people aren't ready.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because what would happen, as I said, is that we would have civil war. If I started using the military, we would have civil war. So that's why I'm using gentle force. I'm going as your queen and commander-in-chief, letting you know that, okay, there's a new boss in town. A different kind of boss, a gentle one, but I think people should recognize that if your commander-in-chief was able to remove the Chinese military from Canada, what does that tell you? Right. So, when necessary, I will use force, but to remove the people oppressing the Canadians and Canada.
So is it true that the clones or the fake or CGI that we'll say the White Hats are supporting to continue, I guess, the awakening and to continue the narrative as extreme and ludicrous as it is, it's still not having the desired effect, it would seem.
I have. That is why I came to Ottawa, because when I looked at the narrative, and that's also when I talk about different timelines, there are different timelines happening all at the same time, different players, shall we say. And when I looked at the timelines, I'm like, okay, my people are lining up to their death to get the jobs. I'm not going to allow that. I removed the Chinese communist military from Canada, and I will not allow my people to march and be, going to their death, literally death camp via that jab. So that's why I went to Ottawa and made sure everyone knew who I was, not just on Telegram, in the flesh, and told them exactly who I am and who supports me and what I have done for this country. I'm not there, I'm not here to sell anything to anyone, because I've already done what I needed to do. So someone asked me the other day, so what is it that you're trying to sell to Canadians? I'm like, I don't have to sell anything to you. I've already done what I needed to do for this country.
It's what we have to do now.
Exactly. So, and the energy turned around after that. And I said, I'm not here to sell you anything. And back in Ottawa, when there was a video clip when a guy came from behind saying, calling me a crackpot, right? And I'm like, well, guess what? What you think of me is none of my business. Enjoy your freedom. And then I just walked away. It's there. I don't have to argue with him. I don't have to use force. It's done. I am it. Whether you like it or not, it's there. I've done my part. Supported by the divine beings, by the U.S. military and Global Alliance.
So this is very ambitious of you to be traveling across Canada in February and early March.
Well, it wasn't planned until I received the guidance to say go to Ottawa, because you have the truckers there that went there asking for the restrictions to be lifted. Little that everybody knew that the truckers' convoy was hijacked by the politicians and the New World Order and the Soros people. The Antifa were there and the BLM. And when I arrived in Ottawa on the 3rd of February, after my speech, that very night, the honking stopped. Because they listened to what I had to say. Truckers, because I made the speech right outside the burning flame. And so there was police officers everywhere and the truckers right in front. So they realized that I said, I'm lifting, this is who I am, I'm lifting the restrictions. Trudeau's government, all levels of government is fired. I fired him before, he refused to leave. They all refused to leave, so I came to Ottawa to make sure he got the message.
So does that mean that the people that are arrested now from the protests, that they're knowingly receiving funds from Soros or things like that, like January 6th, because the people that were arrested were held without bail and,
right, yes.
very extreme by our normal standards. And people are protesting now for the woman to be released and things like that. I don't know if you want to comment on that, because that's the kind of thing that gives people the impression that the dark forces are still in control.
The dark forces are not in control. The shenanigans in Ottawa and in Parliament is just that, shenanigans. As far as the people arrested after February 3rd, because I said, go home, I'm lifting the restrictions. Truckers no longer have the valid reason to be in Ottawa, violating the Ottawans' people's rights to live in peace. Imagine honking, listening to the honking from 8 a.m. in the morning until 1 a.m. They were not part of making that restrictions. They were also a victim of that oppression that was done by the corporation government. After the February 3rd, after I've lifted all the restrictions, everyone who stayed in Ottawa violated the Kingdom of Canada's laws. And so I repeatedly said, go home. You have no more, by honking from 8 o'clock in the morning until 1 a.m., who are you honking? The Parliament is the shenanigans. They have no power whatsoever. Right? They refused. There were majority of the truckers left, and then we had these people that refused to leave, not only because they were being paid, but because they refused to acknowledge Queen Romana's authority and power in the Kingdom of Canada. So I said to the Ottawa police and the armed forces, clean up Ottawa, because these people here are now violating the kingdom's laws. They have no right to be here. Restrictions have been lifted. They can go home to their provinces and enforce that. Right? But they continued to stay there. And so the next thing that happened was, number one, the honking stopped for 10 days while I was in Ottawa. I was in Ottawa February 3rd to the 22nd. Nobody knew, or perhaps they knew and refused, of course, to acknowledge my presence. So I said, clean up Ottawa, remove all of these trucks that are still here. They have no reason to be here. So on the 16th, the Ottawa police and the armed forces distributed flyers telling everyone to leave or they will be arrested. So on the 17th, that's when everyone who was still there was arrested.
And held without bail and things like that. Pretty extreme for protesting.
Held without bail. I believe this is the same. You're speaking of the same woman who's redirected funds of We the People to her bank account. Is that correct? Are we speaking of? Because there was, from what my understanding is that the organizers, there were millions of people, We the People's funds redirected to their individual accounts. So that is money laundering, right? And that is criminal act.
And this is it. I guess people are so used to getting their truth from an official source that without that, and things are so complicated. Everything is very complex, and different layers. There's nothing simple about any of it. That nobody, has come out to verify anything. So it's very much trusting your own intuition.
Correct.
And
yes.
Your connection with the divine source for guiding your discernment, and everybody is very challenged in using their discernment.
Correct, because the critical thinking is no longer there, and also they are very much addicted to the mainstream media that it seems whatever the mainstream media says is their Bible, it seems, right? And also there's that social pressure that they would rather be quiet than speak out their truth.
Yes.
Because they're afraid their friends and families and co-workers will disown them, or whatever the case may be. Can you imagine, had I chosen the same path, Canadians would be in some would have been hauled in some camps right about now by the Chinese military, and you guys would be working 18 hours a day for free for the Chinese Communist Party factories, right? So we all have our own decisions to make as far as standing up, but I'm gentle as the head of state, but I will also not tolerate people dividing and receiving funds and dividing people and creating an illusion that they are for we the people when they're not, and they're receiving funds from other sources meant to disrupt peace in the country. And I have issued martial law for that very reason.
Excuse me, do you have any last questions?
Just one off the top of my head, you know, in terms of people that you would be working with or you would be in agreement with, or, you know, there's many people, you know, Gene Decode has mentioned you, and
yes.
You know, and people, there's so many people and sources to follow. I think of Russell J. Gould and his counterpart, I guess, in Britain, although I don't think they work together, but they talk about similar things. And I believe you had mentioned the gentleman in Britain before in terms of common law and...
No, I do not
No?
operate under common law. I operate Canada. The Kingdom of Canada is under natural law. Natural law is even for everyone. It doesn't change per community, no?
Yeah.
So, and that's the whole planet is actually under natural law now, to be quite honest.
Yes, because there's a lot of followers of, you know, what warrior calls in Canada, and people that, you know, their hearts are certainly in the right place and trying to improve things.
Right.
And it, you know, it's good to know where we should place our energies, because there's many of us that want to serve others and want to work on building Earth
communities and the Earth. Yes.
So it's hard to know in terms of who is
Who to follow?
Yeah.
When you are aligned, you will have that guidance.
Yeah.
You won't have to worry about who you should follow, because you'll have direction, guidance from above. And that duality of who should I follow this, or should I follow that person, will go away when you're aligned. So I'll return that energy back to you, and in terms of you getting aligned in your own time, and then you'll know that, and that sort of wandering and duality energy will go away. And it takes time.
Yes, there's lots of work for many of us.
Yes, definitely.
And
yes.
I've certainly learned in terms of looking at you know, the idea of what people will think, and being ridiculed or being ostracized or standing out from the crowd, you know, and we've been socialized differently, so
Correct,
that takes a while to just even get to that point.
That's why I'm not using force, because we will end up having civil war.
Yeah.
Right? If someone went in there and bulldozed their way in, instead of allowing people that time to recognize what has happened, and then to come to their personal realization that, oh, okay, so this person actually is not here to harm us, but to have already freed us. And I said, you know, regardless of what you think of me, it's none of my business because I've already done. I've already freed Canada and Canadians.
May I take a picture now?